So today I've got a couple of Commodore 64s. What I've got is this one, which I have done a video on before. It's got one of these GAL PLAs in. It's got a VIC chip in. It's missing a kernel ROM, and the 6526s are also missing. Oh, it's also missing a SID. But as far as I know, this does actually function, this board. And I've actually purchased, it's actually a new kernel ROM, a basic ROM and a character ROM, but I only need the kernel ROM. So I'm hoping that if I put the kernel ROM in here, this board will mostly come back to life, except it'll have no sound and you won't be able to do any input. So actually, for not too much of a price, I've also acquired this Commodore 64 motherboard, which is missing a SID and a VIC, and that's it. And I believe the seller said it does kind of work, but he thinks there might be a problem with it, and he's not exactly sure what. So it was quite cheap. I actually bought it because I thought, oh, I'll take the 6526s off this and use them on this board. But this board looks like it's in such good shape. It's actually in, it's actually quite good condition. There's a bit of flux on the back, but everything's nice and shiny. It actually looks in better condition than the other one. So I fancy maybe trying to see if I can get this one working with maybe some of the bits I've got off this. Like if I take the VIC off this, in theory, if this was a working motherboard, it would just boot. What I really want to do is just get one of these two boards working from the parts I've got. So maybe I'll start by just putting the VIC in this one and seeing what I get. Shouldn't be a VIC under here, I believe. Right. Oh, it didn't even have any heatsink paste on there. Oh, it looks really clean in there. Wow. Like super clean in there. Transplant the VIC from this one, and we'll try and boot this board up and see what we get. This is an R1 VIC. So it's not a very good VIC, but it's a VIC and it works. So I was quite gutted because I bid on this board on eBay, and I think it was like £30. And somebody bid on it for 31 while I wasn't looking. And I was like, oh, that's a shame, never mind. I'll get another one. And then the guy came back to me the day later and said, oh, the guy pulled out. I think because he realised, he read the description and maybe realised it was broken. So yeah, he said, you still want it? I was like, yeah. So I bought it for the original price that I bid for it. I think basically I was the only person who actually bid for it then at that point. Right. Okay, so with a VIC installed, in theory, if this was a working computer, this should boot because it's got everything except a SID. It's actually, everything's really shiny on it. The power switch looks really nice. Like, looks been kept in a very, very nice environment, this Commodore 64. I wasn't expecting that because seller said, oh, it's quite dirty and everything. I was like, well, this is like the cleanest one I've ever seen that's come from eBay. I think that was on while I plugged it in then. Hopefully I haven't damaged it. Let's see if we get any output from this. So, no output from that. So maybe I should check. That's one thing I've not done on this. I've not checked these voltage regulators. That is 5 volts. And that's 12 volts. So the voltage regulators are good. So let's actually give this other one a shot before I go any further. I could investigate this one, but I don't need to get both of these boards working. I just need to get one working. I'll take this VIC out and I'll put it back in that board that it just came out of. Because the trouble with that other board is like everything's socketed on it, so I'm not really going to get too far with it. Right, let's put my VIC back in this one. Let's put the, because we haven't got a kernel ROM. Let's put this kernel ROM in. So this hasn't been tried before. There we go. Should get to the basic screen. I'm getting nothing. Am I plugging the wrong cable in? I'm plugging the wrong cable in. Right. That is a real mess. There are two Commodore 64 cables here. Video cables, and one of them is plugged in and the other one isn't. So maybe that other machine does work. I've just been plugging, this cable's not plugged into anything. Damn. That was a big fail. Anyway, we'll get to see if this works now. Here we go. Oh, look at that. Oh, I've got no flashing cursor because I've got no 6526s in. But that's a working kernel ROM. So this machine is kind of back to normal, except no SID, no 6526s. So I've got one kind of working board. Let's just put this diagnostic in and see what we get. I'm not sure if I've had this tested with the diagnostic before. Hey, this is looking good so far. I don't think this has got a really extensive RAM test on this. So the RAM test is passed. Yeah, I don't think it's a full RAM test on this. I think it's only I think if you read the manual, it's only a small amount of the RAM. So that's passed everything that it should have passed on there. Let's try the diagnostic. So this won't pass everything because it's missing the harness and it's missing the CIAs and it's missing the SID chip. But I expect the RAM test to pass. Screen RAM's passed, stack pages passed, RAM test 1 passed. Excellent. So all that other stuff's come up bad because cassette's not hooked up, keyboard's not hooked up, control port's not hooked up. That looks like what I'd expect for what's in this. So that's pretty good. So maybe if I swap back to this other board, and I'll swap the VIC back into that, maybe this is one will boot if I actually plug the right cable in this time. Idiot for doing that, absolute idiot. Right, let me get the VIC out again, and I'll swap it back into the other board. So let's see what we get with this. In theory, this has got everything but a SID. So if this was a working machine, this would just turn on and give me the basic prompt now. So here we go. And that is a black screen. I think the guy did say it was failing the dead test and he thought it was the kernel ROM. I'm not sure if this back bit can boot without the kernel ROM, but let's try it. At least I've got the right cable plugged in this time. Right, here we go. Oh, this will do the diagnostic, I think. Nope. So let's see if we can get it into dead test mode. No, it is dead in the water. So I was probing around for a while on this board to see if I could find out what was going on, why it was black screening. And I tried the diagnostic again, and check this out. It goes black, and wait for it. There it is. There's the dead test. So I don't know why that didn't work before, but it is working now. And this is one of the things the seller said. He said he got through the dead test. I don't exactly know what's going on here, but one of the things about the dead test is it bypasses the ROMs. I would suspect then that one of these ROMs is bad. He did mention in his email, the seller actually think it's probably the kernel ROM. So it could be, because if the kernel ROM was bad, you are just going to get a black screen. And the fact that this is running says that we must have a working VIC. Well, that was mine anyway, so I knew that was working. The PLA probably works because I don't think it could get this far, but it could have some strange fault, not sure. CPU's working because it can't run without the CPU. These two CIA chips are probably working as well. You can see that the times on them are matching up, so they're probably okay, and that's good because they're the things I wanted. The RAM must be working as well, because if any of this wasn't working, it probably also wouldn't boot. So what that means then is it probably does leave that it's one of these three ROMs that's actually bad. Now, I don't know which one it is. It's very likely to be the kernel ROM, but it could actually be one of the other ones as well. And one of the things that's kind of slightly alarming is if I leave this for a while, I don't know if it's going to do it in the dead test mode actually. The basic ROM was getting particularly warm. At the moment, these aren't being engaged by the dead test because they've all been turned off. So maybe they're just not doing anything, but they feel quite cool at the moment. So if I boot this up without this cartridge in, I couldn't find anything on the oscilloscope that was showing me what was bad. I was checking the PLA because I kind of suspected the PLA was bad, but it's got good signals coming out of it. I can't find any bad ones anyway. The only one that's a bit weird is the basic ROM appears to be like not engaged. But I think that's because it isn't getting to the point where it needs the basic ROM, so it's not actually using it. And the dead test doesn't use it either. But if I just boot this, I think I get a black screen. Yeah, so it just stays on black screen now. So that probably does indicate that it's one of these three ROMs, which is great if that's the case, because that just means that, well, instead of like trying to fix that old board and desoldering everything, I can probably just maybe desolder. It could be the kernel ROM. But like I said, if I just leave this for a minute, I think what's actually happening is that the basic ROM gets really warm. It gets warmer than it should. So I'm suspecting the basic ROM, but I also think that if the basic ROM was bad, it would probably boot anyway, and you'd just get a blue screen, you wouldn't get the basic prompt. So maybe that seller's right. It could be the kernel ROM. But yeah, one of these ROMs is bad. That's going to be what I'm going to say. I haven't got any sockets to fix this at the moment, but I have actually already ordered some. I've got some sockets for the ROMs on order, and I've got a socket for the PLA on order in case it is the PLA. So I think I'm going to leave this video here and wait until my sockets arrive, and then I'm going to start desoldering stuff, because I could desolder the kernel ROM now and then stick that in one of the working boards and just see if it is the kernel ROM. But if I did that, I wouldn't even have a way to put it back anyway. So I think I'd rather just wait for the sockets. So yeah, so if that's the case, this board is like not too bad. So that's really good news. So I'll do another video when my sockets have arrived. I think I'm going to start with this kernel ROM, and if we replace that and it works, weirdly, that was the part I bought for the other board that I wanted to work. So if that's the only part that this one needs, just replace that, this starts working again, and then I need a new SID just to get it back to fully working order. And I think I'm going to put one of those modern SID replacements in, so if anyone's got a recommendation about which one of those is the best. I kind of figure that the original SIDs are very expensive, and they're all going to die eventually anyway, along with this PLA. So I think I would like to put a modern SID replacement in and then have this board fully working, and the other one can stay as a working replacement for anything. So that's really cool. I'm quite happy with this board then. It's got a fault, but it's not a really serious fault at all. It seems to be mostly functional. I'll carry on with this in the next video.